Hello, it's Kit Alowitz with another Leadership Journey video segment. Today I want to talk about a thinker statement, and it simply says, what if you and I got punished if we did not speak up, aka give or ask for feedback? Now, I've been keen to this idea, or at least the idea of the idea, after reading Adam Grant's book, Think Again. And it might be an ideal thinker statement for us to use as a backdrop to kick around this thinker statement for a handful of minutes. Now, the idea asks you and I, at least for today, at a theoretical level, to chew on this. What if we literally got punished if we didn't speak up and say something, either when we feel or sense something is wrong, or give feedback or ask for feedback for another person? I want to primarily focus in this video on the latter statement, meaning figuring out a more comfortable way to give feedback, whether asked for by the reactor or figuring out a way on the far side of complexity how to give feedback when it's not solicited by the reactor. Okay, so let me throw in another theoretical thinker just for a moment. And I'm reminded of it from the analogy that Brett Savage shares with us, where he asks the question, how willing would you be to say something to someone leaving shore in a small boat that you know there is a hole in the hull? For most of us, very, very likely, you and I would absolutely unequivocally say something. In fact, we might even get pushy about it, wanting to help another human being out in their own best interest. But we often don't speak up. And I can't quite figure out exactly why I am still so tempted to be hesitant and to not say something when I perceive that it's not life-threatening. Now, if you combine that with the research that we've done internally within the journey over the past 2.5 years on giving and reacting to feedback, it seems like we're at some sort of crossroads here. What's interesting is we would give feedback if a person's life depended on it, and very often we don't say or share or give our reactions or feedback or opinions to others if it's not perceived as life-threatening. Now, we also found in our research that we did internally that most of us, in fact, would rather not hear feedback unless, and there's always an unless, there are some very specific conditions met prior to getting the feedback. Now, I'm still searching for the secret sauce on this particular conundrum. And so, what about this radical, mostly just poking a little bit of fun idea? What if we got punished if we didn't give or ask for feedback or speak up in terms of a mindset? What if we got punished if we didn't regularly ask others for their feedback? Literally, what might happen? What would you do? What would I do? How would we act differently? Can we even imagine this particular scenario? Here's another analogy. What if it was something similar to when we get a speeding ticket? And that's similar to a punishment. If we speed and we get caught, we often get a speeding ticket. Therefore, most of us, most of the time, have the correct speed in the back of our minds so as to avoid getting the ticket. What if we, and I say most of the time, in this light of giving and reacting to feedback, what if we were to seek it out as well as been willing to give it if we knew in the back of our minds, in order to avoid the ticket, the punishment, and avoid some sort of code violation, we were willing to speak up? How wild would that be if we connected the same sort of analogy to speeding as to not giving or giving and reacting to feedback? Now, back to Brent's analogy, what if we could literally imagine our friends and our colleagues as launching a boat with a known hole in it each time we needed to or felt compelled to give them sort of insight that could help them if we had that perspective? So let's talk about for a moment who owns the bigger part on this potential reactor and receiver and giver of feedback. Now, in the final analysis, I still don't know if I know who exactly owns the bigger piece of the pie. Is it the reactor, or is it the person that is giving the feedback? I'm tempted to say that the reactor or the receiver owns the bigger part, to have the courage to find the ways to get reactions from others. As you remember, we tried for a long time to actually create the conditions and emphasize that the sender, not the receiver, but the sender takes the bigger part and just has the courage and provides unsolicited, unasked for feedback. And that really didn't end up going anywhere. And I understand that it's hard to get there, and it's hard. Heck, we even had some cases where unfavorable reactions by fellow colleagues to feedback provided to them in an unsolicited fashion occur. Therefore, short of some radical individual, team, group, functional group, or organizational-wide wild culture shift, it is my belief that the reactor or the receiver owns the larger piece of the pie in giving and reacting to feedback. What if we created a culture where we'd get punished if we didn't ask for feedback or give it? It's a wild idea and something to chew on, and it is a mindset. Or what if part of our overall catch-ups with our manager included having or being required or asked for having some X number of times each quarter where you were expected to ask for feedback from others and then talk to your manager about how it went in each time? Well, I don't know we'll exactly solve this conundrum today in our video time together. However, I will leave you with this. If we believe somewhere deep down inside that there is a powerful way for us individually and collectively to get wiser and better and be in the business of prevention and to better serve our customers through the nuts and bolts and feedback, we've got to find a way. So here's one idea. It's just one real life idea for you and I to consider. This idea is for the sender, the giver. So I talked about earlier about you're the reactor. Now I'm going to talk about from the perspective of if you're the sender, you're the person that's going to potentially give the feedback. And it would be done in an unsolicited situation. And it's intended for those times when you know you want to say something or need to say something and yet are hesitant. And all it is a softening statement to give space for the reactor or the receiver to open his or her sinews before you offer feedback. It basically gives the reactor a primer, a space between stimulus and response, giving you as the sender permission to say something before you say something. And it really boils down to saying these 6 magic words. Are you open to some feedback? Yep, that's it. Are you open to some feedback? These 6 words are intended to be said anytime before you want to give the feedback. Just ask the reactor, hey, how open are you to some feedback? If they say no, then at least you know and you can potentially avoid a weird or uncomfortable situation. If, on the other hand, they say yes, then you have primed them. You have actually given them permission and pricked their amygdala such that they might be more willing to engage with you in a conversation. In the final analysis, it's a small thing. 6 simple words. And frankly, it's the small things that often makes the biggest difference. It's a psychological thing. And frankly, as I mentioned earlier, to the degree that you warm and prime the amygdala system in the reactor's brain, its potential degree in terms of massaging the receiver to literally be able to accept your information, accept your feedback, as well as potentially hole the hole in their hull, in their boat, or at least give the reactor data for them to think about. All these are potentials of these 6 magic words. Are you willing to try it out? For as we take time, as you know, to think about some of these things and put perspective to them and think about what we think about, the way that we think about things can change. So my powerful emotional close is this for today. It's not likely that you and I will find ourselves working in an environment where we'll literally be punished if we don't speak up or ask or give feedback. And yet, we all literally know that we can each get better and wiser. And all of this is in cause for the customer. For how are we to stop doing things if we don't start doing things and thinking things in a different perspective? Sharing insights about others with others, helping to fill the holes in their boat, it's hard, and I recognize that. It takes courage, it takes consideration, it takes empathy, it takes love, it takes I, you versus I, it, and it takes fortitude. Begin or consider beginning that process today by thinking about if you could see yourself asking the reactor next time, hey, is it possible that you might be open to some feedback? I'd love, in fact, to hear how it goes if you're willing to be challenged by that. It will help you and I get better, be better, and in the final analysis, take care of the customer. I'm Kid Owlitz, and we'll see you next time.